Do you ever meet someone for the first time and immediately know that you can be friends? That is exactly how I feel about Marina Byezhanova. She is such a fun spirit. She's an entrepreneur, global speaker, university instructor whose mission is to scale the reach of people's voices and to inspire entrepreneurs to speak up, stand up, and to be radically authentic. Radically authentic. Part of why I love her. She does this through the power of personal branding. She's the co-founder of a personal branding agency called Brand of a Leader, and Marina has been quoted and referenced in such publications such as Inc., Forbes, Fast Company, Success Magazine, Wall Street Journal, and the Financial Post. She has spoken to audiences of entrepreneurs and business executives in North America, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. She's a tenured member of the Entrepreneurs Organization and is presently part of the Global Learning Ambassador Committee. So I really hope that you tune into this podcast and enjoy my conversation with Marina. Welcome. I am so excited that we are finally having this podcast. For everyone listening, I feel like we've had an epic jinx every time we tried to do this, from, me getting my calendar messed up, and then we finally had it scheduled and I was stuck in a hurricane and we almost missed today. And so here we are. Thank God we're getting it done. And so welcome and thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super, super excited to finally be having this conversation. And, I think our lifestyles can be described with what I lovingly refer to as the struggle of the juggle. We juggle so many things that there's hurricanes and, childcare and something else happening, but we make it all work. And here we are. Thank you for having me.
Isn't that the case? I'm going to definitely reuse that phrase as well. That's hysterical. And so, we know a little bit about you from your bio, but your bio is so high level and probably very humble, but so interesting, and all of the different places that you've been and what you're doing. And I would love to hear from your words how you got started in this and where the idea of your company in the first place, because it is really kind of niche in a way. How you got started? Where did it all come from?
So it's something that was built for many years without me realizing that it would culminate in me starting a thought leadership, personal branding agency. The idea that, the conversation, the first conversation that I had when I said, this is what I'm going to be doing, happened at a forum retreat. I'm part of Entrepreneurs Organization, same as you. I was at a forum retreat in 2019 at the end of the year in Turks and Caicos. I was having a few glasses of wine with a fellow member, and we were talking about, what's next in our lives, what really lights us up. By that time, I had been doing a lot of, I never said I was building my personal brand because it kind of sounds awkward and narcissistic, but I had been putting myself out there is how I refer to it. I had been doing public speaking. I was very active on social media. I was, podcast guesting, had done a little bit on my own podcast hosting. And so my fellow forum member, she was saying, you need to be doing more of that. Whatever you're doing, do more of that. That's your next thing. And I said, well, but I want to inspire other people to do more of that, but even some of that. I had realized, Nicole, over the years, how many incredible people I would meet, in Entrepreneurs Organization or other entrepreneurs or other business leaders, very often women, but not always, would not put themselves out there, would say, well, who wants to listen to what I have to say? Who wants to see me out there? What do I have to say that's of value? As I was saying to my friend and fellow entrepreneur, that's what I want to do, a business that inspires people. I don't know how, but to do that. She goes, that's amazing. What would you call this business? And we're having, a couple of glasses of wine. I said, Turks and Caicos is beautiful. And I'm thinking about it. And I said, I would call it Brand of a Leader. And she goes, that's amazing. So that's 2019, end of 2019. She goes, that's amazing. I don't think the domain is going to be available. GoDaddy.com. I checked the domain. It's available for $199. She says, this is a sign. I bought the domain and the rest is history. We're now, we have a team of 20. We're We have clients all across the globe, North America, Middle East, Europe, South America, really across the globe. But that was the conversation that made it all very real.
Yeah, I love that. And it's, it's so funny. Like the best ideas happen, I think, when we are least expecting it or not intending to plan for it, so to speak. And it's very similar as to how we came up with the title for our book, Money Bitch, actually, was literally like, oh, I have no idea what we're going to do and what we're going to call it. And then one line in a pool on vacation, and there you have it, right? But it's so... and speaking to that, like a couple of things, right, is number one, why are we so afraid to celebrate what it is that we do well and our zone of genius, and talk about the thoughts that we have, but more or less being a pioneer in our industry and in bragging in a way where it's not narcissistic, but if we don't do it, who's going to do it for us at the end of the day? Like the answer is no one. And so why does that belief exist? I think we have many, many reasons, of which aren't facts, of course. But what do you find in working with leaders that are some of those big barriers or beliefs that people have to overcome to be able to start really talking about how to become their own personal brand and to do it well in a way that it is deeply authentic?
It has to be deeply authentic. I was speaking with a prospective client today, and she said, okay, so you're going to create this brand for me and brand positioning and my sound bites and my story. But then how do I make sure that when I say all this, it doesn't feel like I'm trying to memorize it? Like, how do I integrate it? And I said, no, when we come up with all of it, it all comes from you. There's nothing we create that you're going to read and be like, okay, let me memorize this or let me make sure it fits. It needs to be completely representative of who we are. It's one of the biggest misconception in personal branding or branding is that it's something that's created, a PR version of. It's not the case. It needs to be an expression of who we are, just expressed in a way that's catchy and punchy, and that's the branding piece. But to answer your question, one of the biggest obstacles that people have, all of us who are not a narcissist, is imposter syndrome. We question ourselves, right? So, and it's mind-blowing to me because people who question themselves the most are the ones that are the most qualified to be out there and have a voice. So many people, I was invited to be interviewed on this, TV network, and I said no, and I go, oh, what do you mean you said no? Well, I wasn't sure that what I had to say would be of value. Well, they reached out to you. You didn't even pitch them. They're not idiots. They reached out for a reason. Yeah. I was invited to speak at this event, but what was they going to talk about? And so all these questions of I'm not as qualified, I'm not as good, that these are highly accomplished people. They don't have it in their work, but they have it when it comes to the public eye and putting themselves out there. That's one. And then the second one that's also very big is the court of public opinion. What if I say something and it negatively impacts me, my business? What are people going to think? What if I get canceled? So that concern is a big bottleneck for people as well. It's really both.
Yeah, it is. And we're so concerned always about what everybody else thinks, and I used to be that person, by the way. Like, let's just be super transparent here. I was like deathly afraid of disappointing somebody or letting somebody down. And so like for so long, I was very reserved and I held back from being myself. And the crazy thing is as soon as I just like released all of that stuff and just decided to say, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to be me and talk about the things that I care about and help the people I want to help. And if you don't like it, so sad, too bad. I can't help everybody anyways, but really started being authentic and genuine and talking about that. It was like this huge burden was lifted, first of all, because I didn't have to worry so much about who the hell I was like trying to be that day or who I wasn't trying to offend in that matter. And it's so easy to offend people these days. And then, but as I started to do that, it was like, it just took less energy and less effort. And it did help our brand. And sure, we pissed some people off and offended some people along the way, but that's okay, because I think what I have found is that they weren't the people that would have been a joy to work with anyways. And so, in doing that, it was scary as hell. But if I didn't, I don't think we would have ever been able to develop a company with that brand that was so aligned and authentic. And, do you find with your clients and who you're working with, once you help them like crack the code or get over this like hurdle of being uncomfortable and having a good degree of vulnerability, I'm sure, do they end up feeling more fulfilled within their businesses?
Hugely. And so first of all, that hesitation of what if I'm not liked? What if, people don't accept me, people reject me? It's such a normal feeling, right? As human beings, that sense of wanting to belong and not wanting to be rejected, it's very, very normal. We all have it. But and we have these conversations with clients very often when they say, well, what if I put myself out there, people are not going to like me? Or can I avoid that? And yes, you can avoid that, but by having no point of view and being very neutral, you're going to not have any people who are not going to like you, but you're going to have no people who love you. And that's the trade-off, right? So as you said, you pissed off a lot of people or people that didn't like you, maybe they really didn't like you. But then you got some real fans, right? Like people who love you. And that's what it's all about when we're being authentic and when we have some kind of a point of view. But is it fulfilling and is it rewarding? Are there benefits to the business when we do put ourselves out there and have a point of view? Well, of course, because again, and that's the same with our corporate brand too. We have a point of view, we repel, but we also attract very, very strongly. And there are also benefits to us as human beings. If we're able to get over the fact that some won't like us and those messages that we get, they sting, but we're able to let go of them, that's a small percentage. Vast majority of people are, if they have something to say, vast majority of people, it's supportive, it elevates us, it makes us feel great. So we can focus on that. Not only to the business is it rewarding, but to us as human beings. That feeling of being loved and supported is extremely rewarding as well. And we've seen that with our clients too.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like when I'm in that zone or being able to do the things I'm deeply passionate about, it helps my energy and my frequency and my creativity and the vision. And then it just is a ripple effect to everyone who I'm talking to, which is so significant, and the biggest comparison is like before I was just kind of like, it was kind of heavy, kind of not. I wasn't really fired up about anything, and now that there's so much clarity around that, it's exciting to get out of bed and it's exciting to always be building. So, why do you feel it is worth the discomfort getting out of your comfort zone and really starting to develop a personal brand? Like, why is this significant nowadays, especially, and why should leaders be paying attention to this and the work that you're doing?
It's an interesting question because, it reminds me of what was it, 15 years ago about when social media started becoming a thing and we started having conversations of why should businesses be on social media? And then a couple of years passed and it became a no-brainer. You're not on social media, you're not relevant anymore, period. And at that time, we had the same discussions. Is it right for everyone? Who's it right for? Maybe it's not for this business. Maybe it's not for that business. And literally a couple of years later, you didn't jump on the bandwagon, you're obsolete or you're catching up. Today, it's the same for personal branding or for thought leadership branding, putting yourself out there, building visibility, whatever you call it that makes you feel more comfortable. This is what modern leadership is all about. And marketing has shifted as well. So twofold. And thought leaders who are not realizing the importance of this, they're going to start becoming irrelevant and they're going to start going into oblivion and affecting their business as a result. So twofold. Number one, this is what is expected from a modern leader. Our customers are expecting CEOs who have a position. Research shows this. They're expecting CEOs who stand for something and it's clear what they stand for and they're inspiring, they're aligned in core values. That is how customers are choosing their businesses more and more. So number one. Number two, our employees, current or prospective, again, they're looking to us to see, well, what do we stand for? Are we making a difference? Are we making an impact? They're proud of us when they see us on stages, on podcasts, hosting events, bringing together thought leaders. I'm sure you get that from your team all the time. Like they're wowed and they're proud. And we want that feeling. And that's how we attract other A players who want to work for A players. And then from the, marketing standpoint, it's really hard to promote a business. It's not what it used to be. How many people are going to follow our social media pages of our business if they're not already a customer? it's hard to acquire them, right? It's a lot of ad dollars that we have to spend. People are not going and randomly following businesses on social media or going and reading our blogs, corporate blogs, but people still connect with other people and other human beings. And they might connect not because they're looking for a service, but because they're inspired by you as a leader and a thought leader, and they're learning from you as a human being, and then they become customers as well. So competing and positioning our businesses on the basis of thought leadership, that starts not only the founder, not only the CEO, ideally at the very least the entire leadership team, it just becomes a competitive advantage from the marketing standpoint as well. So those would be the main reasons. And number one, not becoming irrelevant.
Yes, to all of those things. I mean, brilliant. And I love how fired up you just got talking about that. Like, and it is so true. I mean, the reality is like business is different. Doing business is different. If you want to be relevant, you have to look ahead and anticipate and be able to pivot. And it's just, it's changing at this rapid clip too. And how you even stand out. I mean, the marketplace is so noisy. There's so much information, and how can you get someone to care? And to the point that you made, which I think is important to talk about a bit, is like your team, your employees. Like, no longer do employees just want to come to work to clock in and clock out, especially the younger generations. Like, gone are the days where they just wanted to earn a paycheck. It's am I contributing to a purpose? What is our mission? What do I feel good about within the organization? And what is that leadership team doing? What are their values? What do they care about? And does it align ethically? You know, we're having these conversations, I think, that are beautiful, but they are new. Not that the concepts themselves are maybe so new, but I think how we need to act as leaders is definitely different, and how we're sharing that, right, is like this downstream effect, and navigating that is challenging. And for me, it's also taken like this big degree of vulnerability. Like, it is one thing to talk, I think, to the public, right, about a belief system or what you're going through, or story tell and have an opinion. But then when you're doing it with your team, when you feel like you always have to be so strong and so positive and so resilient, but do you? And at what point do you blend all of it to make sure that they're vested? And one thing that I think has been so helpful for us, and I'd love for you to talk about this too, and what you've seen as you've developed this with your clients, is like creating entrepreneurs, like having your employees be so vested in that brand and mission because they are clear on it. And I think that's one thing that businesses struggle so much with, and why they need you is clarity on what that even is in the first place. But once employees get it, they click, and it's like they now shift and take extreme ownership in their position, the impact that they're making, because they're so inspired by the leadership team and what they are hearing and seeing, because now they can connect their position with the bigger vision.
There are so many different amazing things that you said there. Let's unpack a whole bunch of them, because you said such important things. So number one, you said, it's hard to be vulnerable with our internal teams. It's just such a good point you make. A lot of people think it's so hard to do it, at scale and publicly, but it's often so much harder because you kind of like put it out there and off you went, but then your team stays there and they ask questions and they follow up with you and kind of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, right? Like it's closer. And a lot of people think it's the other way around. Such a good point. And then you asked the question, it sounded rhetorically, but it's, again, so important. You said, I feel like I should be vulnerable, but should I be? And like, should I tell that story? Should I not? Should I keep it close to heart? When we talk about personal branding, most of us think external. Most of us think social media. But it starts with internal in our own team. We want to be on brand, not only out there. We might decide not to be on social media. We might decide not to be out there so much. But within our teams, we're already there. And we want to figure out, what does Nicole being on brand, what does it mean? Are you someone who wants to be perceived as vulnerable? Maybe you don't, and that's okay. Maybe there's something else. Are you someone who wants to be perceived as, big personality and outspoken? Maybe yes, maybe not. So it's all those questions. So that's something that we work through with clients is, well, how do you want to be perceived? Because it's your choice. What's authentic to you? Now, it has to be through the lens of how, what is real and what is true to you. You can't decide you want to be perceived as ABC and you're not that at all. And then how do you not want to be perceived? Maybe you want to be, say, I want to be perceived as vulnerable, but not complaining or not weak, right? So you define those and then you refer to it until you become, you own it and it becomes ingrained. You refer to it when you are not only external, but also internal with your teams as well. Now, a lot of people challenge me on this and they say, well, if I'm being authentic, then I am on brand. Why do I need to do this? But the thing is, as human beings, we're complex. We can be perceived in 100 different ways and all authentic. But what do we want our brand to be? We want, same as when we build a list of core values, we build 3 or 5. We want 3 to 5 personal brand descriptors that over time, people will start associating us with. And it doesn't mean vulnerable for everyone. It doesn't mean, that it's all the same for everyone. It doesn't mean that we need to take a position on everything. It doesn't mean that we need to storytell on everything. But we need a clearly defined strategy so that then we can stick to it externally and internally as well. So it's really, really smart that you brought up that internal piece. And then for our team members, well, what better, more powerful thing to have within an organization than a team of bought in, raving fans of our companies. And then how powerful would it be if they then became spokespeople for the organization as well? And a lot of companies, they because they're afraid that, if they're out there and they're speaking, they're going to get stolen from us. Somebody else is going to hire them. The concern when LinkedIn came out. But we're seeing more and more organizations bringing in experts like Brand of a Leader to give workshops and talks and train their employees on becoming those, brand ambassadors as well through the power of their own personal brand building as well. So it's starting at the top. It's going to slowly trickle throughout the organization as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, for those of you listening who do have employees, just think of the value of your employees and your team members being raving fans and brand ambassadors. How many people do they know that you don't know and that they can market to on an authentic, genuine level that you don't even have to pay marketing dollars for? That is huge. There's no better way to grow the brand of your company, right? I think I heard this quote a while ago, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? And even still to the point of not even growing your company, but if your employees are rating fans, how easy is it for you to get more employees by people that they can bring in? And I think the number one thing that I hear from my peers is that I can't hire anybody. It's so hard to find the right people, and the best way that I have found is to have people who know us really well talk about us, to say, hey, I think you'd be a good fit.
You're so right. And, I attended a session, I was giving a talk at Deloitte, and there was a gentleman that spoke before me on the future of work. And he talked about, why is it so hard to attract employees? And what is it that employees, especially the younger ones, the Gen Zs that have entered the workforce, what are they expecting? And there was a list, but at the top of the list was they want to feel that what they're doing is cool. And which is to no surprise, right? Because then they want to share it. It's a generation that likes sharing things and living the life. And then a lot of the leaders in the room, it was older leaders in the room too, they felt a bit disenchanted because they said, well, the verticals that we're in, they're not cool. So how do we make it cool? It's not cool. We love our work, but it's not cool. And then my talk was right after, which was great timing. And they said, well, you become the cool aspect. You are the voice. You show your, mission and how you, and why you love what you do. And you be the cool presence out there to, coolify the work that they're doing. Here's your opportunity. So, younger generations, they're looking for things that they can be proud of, that they can feel they're cool and that they can share. And as you said, how much more powerful, if you just go on LinkedIn and look at company posts talking about how, they're a great place to work, no engagement. You look for their HR, heads of HR posted, a little bit of engagement, at least it's human, but you look at one of the team members writing, I love working here and here's why, and this is what they just did for me. It might be so benign, but people are like, oh, that sounds so amazing. Is this company hiring? Yeah. They're so great, right? It's the human to human connection. It's very hard to beat.
Yeah, I love it. It's so many incredible ripple effects to the work that you do that literally increase profit. And I think that it's something that we all overlook too much, and to almost to the extreme, to our detriment, where I see so many business owners focused on the tactical, focused on the day-to-day and how we're growing and looking at like more of the logistical side of things, or even a marketing strategy, a social media strategy, but like completely ignoring the entire side of themselves and the business and the assets that they have. And by assets, I mean people that they don't leverage enough. And so like, I'm just so inspired by what you're doing, what you're talking about, and your type of work, because this is such a critical time to reevaluate whether or not you're doing this. And to what you said earlier like, if you want to stay relevant, you can't ignore this, period. Especially as a small business or a mid-sized business, like we don't have the market share that Amazon has, and that competition is getting steeper. And so how will you continue to stand out? So shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to hear like some of the challenges that you've had, because this company for you, this part of you is relatively new. And so as you've been building it, is there anything that stands out to you as far as like a major inflection point where you knew like, holy shit, I can't believe that just happened. But also, I guess it's a good thing it just happened because now I am here. So is there anything that comes to mind?
So many. Where do I start? Right. I'll share just a couple. Well, number one, starting the business, because when I had that conversation in Turks and Caicos in 2019, the decision I made at the end of the conversation about the domain, and I said, in 3 years, I'm going to launch this business. That was the plan. And then I was running and scaling another business at the time, had been for 10 years. And then 3 months later, the pandemic hit, and it hit really hard and really bad and decimated my other business. And as I was like sitting on the ruins of all of it, thinking my life is ruined, I fortunately never expressed depression, but for like 3 days, I was very close to it. Couldn't get out of bed. I was just thinking, this is it. Like I lost it all. My business went to zero revenue. I still have all the expenses. I didn't prepare for this. I told myself I'm a shit entrepreneur. This is what happened. So I couldn't tell anybody that this was happening because I felt like everybody's a great entrepreneur. They prepared for the global pandemic, but I'm the only one who didn't.
Because we knew it was coming, right?
Yeah. Everybody knew I didn't, but everyone else did, right? And so that was really hard. But what happened during that time for all of us is a huge moment of introspection. Absolutely all of us. We paused and we started questioning, our impact and our mission and what we were, on planet Earth for, our businesses. We started questioning, and brand of a leader helps answer a lot of those questions. It's a process of introspection that we take clients through. So instead of launching it 3 years later, I launched it then in 2022 with my co-founder. And so that's one of those inflection points where like, holy shit, my life is ruined. And now in retrospect, because as we started building, I'm like, am I ever going to rebuild? I don't know. Oh my God. And now 3 years later, I can be like, oh my God, thank God it happened. And I launched it then and not now 3 years later, right? Mm-hmm. So that's number one. Yeah. Number two, there's been so many different things. We're growing a business. There are other personal branding agencies, but a big part of what we do is extremely unique. What we do is we help our clients develop a unique concept that expresses who they are and becomes, the basis, the anchor of their personal brand building, gives them like a purpose to put themselves out there. And other agencies don't do that. Other agencies focus more on the, what the person does, not an expression of who they are. So we create something unique. It sometimes, gives us challenges of hiring certain people. We have A players that knock on our doors. We're very fortunate, but we have to train. It's not people who come to us because they've done it, since it's so unique. So that presents one of the challenges and opportunities too. But an inflection point that happened was at the end of last year. So we've built our agency on phase one. We develop your brand. For some clients, it's, positioning strategy, all those things, but also visual identity. And then step two, well, now there's implementation. Now that we figured out your brand, how do we market it? How do we build visibility? Big focus for us has been written content creation, helping clients write articles and social media posts, specifically LinkedIn. ChatGPT came out last year, and all of a sudden, I realized that it's a big threat to our business. And yes, the content that's created through GPT right now is not up to par. It's generic. It kills trust. A lot of platforms, scan against it. But does it matter? As a business owner, not every competitor, and to us, ChatGPT became a competitor, not every competitor is good. They can be crap. But when they're the best marketed one, everybody's using them, everybody's referring them, everybody's recommending them, and it's like $20 if you're on the paid thing. That's a problem. And so that was a big inflection point of going, okay, so I guess we're not a content creation agency. We need to rethink that part of implementation and visibility for our clients. Again, our service is still very powerful. We create content that's fantastic. And a lot of clients prefer that than something that's generic. Trust is becoming, at a premium. So would you want something generic versus? But beyond that, we very quickly expanded into other services as well, faster than we expected. So now we also book our clients as guests on podcasts. We do podcast reach out. We started doing speaker reach out as well, meaning booking our clients as guests at events, panels, keynote speaking, etc. So that was an inflection point as well. And one of the things I'm really proud of is being able to act really fast and pivot very fast and have a team that doesn't, freak out and jump ship, but says, okay, this is exciting. Let's do that as well. So this is just some of the, the roller coaster journey parts.
Well, I love that. And, and I'm curious if you think that going through 2020 and having a business that was decimated by that and you didn't have anything else to fall on or other components of that is now forcing you to run this business differently, right? And constantly being able to pivot, to add different silos to your business and always have like the radar out there of anticipating and then being realistic and ready for rapid change, right? Where you've already, and this has been a very short period of time, have made many changes, but it hasn't slowed you down.
Right. Very much so. I mean, that was such a huge learning experience. And listen, one of the biggest mistakes that I made on the other business, and you'll appreciate this one, was really poor money management. So that business had zero debt. I was very proud of that, but it also had zero cash reserves because who needs such a thing? Because everything's great. What could happen in life, right? Money is coming in. We were extremely profitable. So why worry? And that's exactly what happened. So as soon as everything went to zero, like literally every single client put the projects on hold. So revenue just went to zero, but expenses stayed and there were no cash reserves. And that was so embarrassing and shameful to talk about. Nicole, I can talk about it now, but you would have asked me 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, I would have never told you this because this was felt so embarrassing. And a lot of people experience that in their personal lives too, right? I'm sure you see that all the time. So one of the biggest learnings will that have cash reserves. And now we do. So now, when something hits and let's say there's a decrease in clients, it's not a disaster. It allows us to still space because when disaster hits, it's hard to be creative and it's hard to pivot, right? Because you're hurting. But when disaster hits and you are comfortable enough, you're able to ideate and pivot and still look at this as an exciting time and not a complete destruction. So one of many, and yes, it's taught me to innovate more and be, faster innovation, not sit on things. And definitely when you have nothing and you need to rebuild really fast, you get very creative and very quick, very soon. When you're comfortable, right? Comfort is often the enemy. So I've learned that too.
Yes, being on fire doesn't hurt. That is for sure. But yeah, I mean, the financial advisor in me, of course, is screaming from the rooftops, always have cash reserves. And that's why they're called emergency reserves. And it's so funny because sometimes I get that kickback where, clients are like, well, why do I need this much? Well, I can't imagine any scenario where that would happen. And that perfect case in point. And it's nothing to be ashamed of because the reality is, well, we don't know what we don't know. And if you haven't experienced it, it's hard to reckon with yourself how it could even become a thing, right? And life teaches us so many beautiful things, whether they feel good in the process or not, or damn painful, but hindsight is always valuable. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you. This has been so helpful, and I just love everything that you're doing. I have so much conviction in its significance. So before we close out, is there any last message that you want to leave with our listeners?
The one thing that I would add is, so many people think erroneously that building their personal brand makes them too tied to the business, makes the business less exitable, makes the business more dependent on them. They feel they become the face of the business, and that can be detrimental. And it's very important to understand that that only happens when you become the spokesperson for your business, not when you build your personal brand. When you build your personal brand, it needs to be an expression, not of what you do, but of who you are. It's the one most important message you will hear me say it on stage at your amazing event. I say it all the time. Your personal brand is who you are, not what you do. And when you zoom out from what you do and just owner of ABC, who are you? What do you stand for? What do you want your impact to be beyond the business, which is already amazing impact? When you work on building your personal brand, those are the questions you answer. And not only does it bring value to your business, you're able to impact and inspire at scale. And what can be more rewarding than that?
Yeah. Beautiful. Perfect way to end. Thank you so much. And I must say, Marina is going to be one of our speakers at our Becoming PowHERHouse Summit, which is March 8th. And when you guys are listening to this, the summit will have probably already passed. But that's okay, because the cool thing about it is we're going to do this every year. But this is the kind of person Marina is and why you should follow her. Of course, all of the amazing, incredible things that she has just shared with you. But we were introduced by a mutual friend, Andrea Houston, who was another guest on the podcast. She will also be a speaker at the summit. But I went over the vision of this summit and this crazy idea at the time when we first chatted, that I was just tossing it at a wall, right? I think I'm going to do this, of which we're rapidly turned into, we're definitely doing this, and how the hell am I going to pull this off? But once I explained it, you were just yep, I'm in. Yeah. I'll be there. And those are the people you need in your circle, right? The women who just jump on board with a good idea and they support you full out. And Marina is not only coming and talking and sharing her beautiful gifts, she's waving her speaker feet because she has so much belief and conviction in supporting and empowering other women in the cause that we're supporting. And that's significant when you're surrounding yourself with other women who give a shit. And it's not just about the initiatives that you're doing and the nonprofit that you're giving back, but it's that human connection and the ability to support each other in these journeys that we go through as business owners, because it is not that easy. It is not linear. It is hard and tough and trying. And yes, it's worth it. But there are those moments where sometimes you do want to stay in bed for 3 days and nobody pulls you out, right? You got to do that work yourself. And so from the bottom of my heart, I do so appreciate you. And I hope that everyone listening to this starts to follow you on LinkedIn and engage with your content. All of the links are in the show notes. So until next time, my PowHERHouses, continue to be courageous.